Okay, so this is what I'm looking at. Like how I've got these little darks in here, differences of darks in there, the mouth, right? Just subtle variations. That's what I'm concentrating on. And the way you draw with this guy, if you don't have any dark on it, just pick some up from the background. And let's put in kind of that separation between the beak and the feathers. It's subtle. That's what we're going for with this, subtle. You're mimicking what you see and where you see it. That mouth definitely needs some more darks in it, and I'll have to use my pencil. So I'm working with a 2B because it's pretty sharp, holds that edge pretty well. Nice dark there through the mouth. Can't tell if our white pekin is smiling or frowning or just indifferent. Nate, what would you say?
If he's smiling or not?
Yeah.
No.
So what is his emotion?
Just like no emotion.
Mm-hmm. If you're uncertain about how dark to put something, you squint at it. You squint at it and then compare it to values next to it. And we have a pretty bright white right here on the edge. In fact, I think I need to erase some to make it a little whiter. And a very black background. So between those two is where you're judging. You try to match it. There's a little line from the nostril down to the mouth. Do you see it right there? Don't forget to get that one in there. And back here, oh gosh, so hard to see on the screen. Like at the back of his beak, there's like two little lines, one on top, one on bottom, and then there's a white spot in between. Don't forget that one. And look at this nice white, just a trickle of an edge right at the bottom of his beak. So it goes black, and then it goes to like a 2, really fine 2 right there, and then it drops to a 4. Don't forget that. That's all detail that we want to get in. Now I'm using my eraser to pull out some of those whites that I missed before, right along the beak. It's pretty white. If I want a soft erase, I use my kneaded eraser. If I need a hard edge, I use my pink eraser. Tip of that beak is super white. Very crisp edge on the peak of that beak. The beak peak. Okay, your general value at it, when a person looks at your drawing, if the general value is accurate, it captures them from a distance because there's some stark change in value. It looks interesting from a distance. But then when they get up close, then they have to focus on details. And that's when that matters, is up close. You don't see details from distance, all you see is general value. So this way you capture your audience both from a distance and up close. And if you catch the viewer studying your drawing, it's because there's a lot to look at. A lot of details that are really fascinating. And that's what we want them to do. Have something to look at. How did they... Wow, that is so amazing. That's what we want them to say. How did they capture that so good? Squinting at that beak, I would say the tip of the beak is the whitest thing there. So at the top of his beak, it's light also, but I don't think it's white. White is the tip of the beak, so I'm going to leave that. And then the top of that beak, I've got to drop down to like a 1.5-ish. So I'm just barely grazing over it with a Q-tip, just to pull in a little bit of graphite. Make sure that you're nice and crisp all the way around. It's got a very crisp edge with black surrounding it. Brushing off the little nubs from your eraser is always problematic. If you wipe it with your finger, oftentimes you'll just smudge more graphite. So clean Kleenex, kind of wiping it away works pretty good. Okay, moving on from the beak now. Now we got to get into the eye. And I'm applying some of the darks. Luke, see if there's some in that box right there. Yeah. And pull the Q-tips out too, if I didn't pull those out. Okay, we got Q-tips and Kleenexes over on the counter for you. Everybody has a shading stump though, right? No lack of shading stumps. Okay, so as I apply my darks here, I can see that there's just too much dark on my shading stump. So get rid of some of that graphite on a piece of paper until it's the right value. Feel like I'm putting makeup on my pecan's eyes. Let's put some mascara on you. Got that dark spot right in front and then this one in back too. So now we're putting in some of that texture. It's soft, but it's there. And underneath. If you need to go darker, you just go over your background and put some back onto your shading stump. If you want to go lighter, you have to get rid of it on a piece of paper. Yeah, that's creating some nice texture detail. Right, we're capturing, there's like this dark right here behind the eye, and then it kind of goes down the neck. And then putting some dark textures around his face right here. His little beard of some sort. Some deep fours there on the base of his neck we got to put in. Soften it up a little bit with a Q-tip. Most of his face is not a 1, it's more of a 1.5 or 2. I do see some 1, some 1s right along there. Okay, I'm gonna move now to the back of his neck. Where all of those, there's so much texture there. And probably use an eraser also, but I'm gonna start with the shading stump, pick up some darks from the background. There's those three or four white little things here. I'm gonna work from there. It's easy to get lost in all these details. There's so much going on right there in the back of the neck. Really a lot of details, little bumps. And I don't know that we're going to get everything. We just want to get most of it and try to be as accurate as possible. So pick some of the bigger landmarks and go with those. Remember, we're still working as a whole. Like, I don't have to finish everything on the neck right now. I can go do something else and then come back to it later if I get a little frustrated or just tired of it. It's like, oh, this is hurting my eyes, all these little teeny variations in his neck feathers. I'll move on to something else and then come back to it later. All right, just enjoy the process. We're slowly emerging this white peeking from the board. If something is too aggressive, just soften it up with your Q-tip. I don't want to move down into leave the neck for a while. I did get some of those in, and you can't see them super well on camera, but they're there. And I want to get some of that detail down in the breast right here. So first I'm going to put in some dark lines, I guess, kind of representing those feathers. And then I'll come through with an eraser and pull out the horizontal ones. Whatever you do on top is mimicked in the reflection down below. Okay, so I'm going to drag my pink eraser across subtly put in those white lines, whatever they're coming from on his feathers. Doing it down below, also mimicking what happens up above. Yeah. Really like that. Maybe even a little more texture. I think I'll use my kneaded eraser and see if I can't pull out some of the darks and lighten them up so I can get some more of the texture. This time more of a vertical erasing that I'm doing. Mimic it down below. Yeah, it didn't take much. See that subtle, there's this subtle white crease in his, where his neck meets his body right there. I wanna get that. I'll do with my kneaded eraser since that's the softer eraser. See if I can't pull just a slight amount of graphite off of there. It's pretty good. A little too much, so I'll soften it up with my Q-tip. Nice. Crispen up that edge a little bit. Nice. Now I've hardly done anything on those tail feathers in the reflection. There's all these funky shapes and I drew most of them out and I just didn't feel like my general value tools got me where I needed to go. It was made it too, erased them all. So I'm gonna use my shading stump to get most of those abstract shapes, color by number, paint by number shapes, and just start filling them in with my shading stump. Now, I don't know that I'm done everywhere where I've already gone. Like my neck, I might come back to it later, but I'm moving on just for the sake of interest, right? I'm working it globally, holistically, not all in one spot, totally completed. And that keeps my interest a little bit more, doing it that way. Constantly checking your values. Are they dark enough? Is it light enough? Compare it to what's next to it. Squint at it, make a judgment. Remember, most people don't go dark enough. They stay too light. They're up in the upper 2s and 3s and ranges, and they never get to the 4s and the 5s. So if you're questioning if it's darker or lighter, go darker. Distinguish between hard, crisp edges and soft transitions. You need both. Okay, getting there with those tail feathers and the reflection. Mimicking those abstract shapes, values, soft transitions. Still not there yet. Still want to work it a little bit more. But it's getting there. I think I want to move on to something else for a while.